And hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of One Take because life has no rehearsal. Today, well, I am absolutely honored to bring Jaime, and I cannot pronounce, as you know, your second name, Szulc, but I can pronounce the other last name, Cohen. So, Jaime, I met him when he was Johnson Wax, which is one of my favorite companies in Brazil. From then on, the story is amazing. I mean, it makes 90% of us who are listening to this podcast and 100% of us who are doing the podcast feel absolutely inferior. We're talking about a guy who was president of Kodak for Latin America. What was that? President of Kodak Americas, chairman of Kodak APAC and Middle East, global COO of Kodak. So he killed film. And I'm a photographer. So that. Global CMO of Levis, president of GoodYear Latin America, and finally global CEO of a company called EIMC with 400 restaurants and 12,000 employees. They own Margaritaville. Everybody knows Margaritaville. So today, 10 people benefit from all of this experience, all of this knowledge. He is a very important coach to CEOs. He sits on 5 boards. And he travels like all over the place. So, benvido, Jaime.
Gracias, Marcelo. Thank you very much, and thanks for the kind words.
Oh man, it's beyond kind. I mean, like you have a stellar story, and like I was saying before the podcast, one of the things that distinguishes people like us as we get there, we have drawn blood. Not to mention, we've probably killed people along the way. Like in the words of mafia, we're made. So, but everybody begins somewhere. So, let's talk about your decisive moment. What happened? What made you this?
Yeah, I would say, Marcelo, in my case, there were 3 decisive moments. The first one was I was in Brazil, and I was offered by SC Johnson Wax the opportunity to go and be the marketing director in Venezuela for the Northern Cone. And I remember everybody told me, you're freaking out of your mind if you accept. People have guns in their houses. I went there the first time. There was a door like a prison in Altamira. And but it was the first time that I came to realize that by being born in Brazil or in Latin America, if I wanted to have a great future for myself professionally, I would have to go for remarkable results. So it was the first time it hit me big time that I wanted to be in situations where the opportunity was gigantic. I didn't want to work in places where a 5-10% growth was enough. So I made a decision to go because that was by far the largest challenge that was presented at the time. And I had another job offer at the time in Brazil. So I packed my bags and went to Venezuela, no?
I remember that
and
well.
then we went from pardon me?
I remember that well.
Yeah, exactly. We went from being the second worst cluster in the company to being the number 7 in a year and a half. So it was a super interesting journey. The second moment, I think it was in Kodak, when I was managing the Latin American business. It was a 450 million business. We were very fortunate to have had a huge success, also in digital, because we, did a lot of things there. And the United States business, the United States and Canada business, the North America business was in shambles. We had lost about $1.5 billion in 2 years. And for 5 years, the team, hadn't made a penny in bonus. So the business was about 4 billion. And they offered me the job to manage the region, the whole Americas. So that was a defining moment because I was between, can I really do it? All the imposter syndrome, no? Despite the fact that you achieve a few things, you always question yourself that you can do it. And also, it was a tremendous story. We became leaders. We made, money. We made 100% of the goals in 2.5 years. So it was a very, very humbling story, not without a lot of suffering, no? And the third one was when I left the corporate world. So when my last job as a CEO, we had a mandate to, in 2.5 years, to turn around the business. It was a public company, investors pissed. And in a year and a half, we were able to turn around and almost be ready to sell. And I found myself without a job. So that's when I moved to being an investor, disastrous play. Then I started doing boards. I did independent boards. I was super unhappy with that because there was not a lot of involvement. I was itching for a CEO job. And then I finally found myself being a coach for CEOs and transforming my board practice in more of an advisory board. So that's been super humbling again. Now, it looks like every time I made a change in jobs, there's this period of 6 months to 9 months where it's disaster and chaos all around. But the resilience pays off now. And you and I spoke about it, Marcelo. The whole thing about being a coach is being an executive, the power of the work. You work and you present results. Being a coach or being a board member is the power of the word. So using your skill set, competence as you are an executive versus a coach or versus a board member is very different, that translation, no? And for me, the biggest translation is number one, analysis. I was always very hands-on the analysis and zooming out. And number two, vulnerability, because when you're a CEO and you're vulnerable, that's a huge asset, no? I think for ourselves in terms of happiness at the workplace, but also for people. And translating vulnerability from the executive to coaching is a handful. So those are the three moments.
So, which now brings me to a huge problem, right? So you've worked in so many categories, and honestly, you've worked in so many worlds. You have worked in the international sphere, which, by the way, everybody talks about international as if it were a soup. Oh, international. It is not. In my case, you deal with 67, 70 countries, all of them are different. And it's a total mess. And you probably don't even, more messier stuff. But we've also gone through huge amount of changes. For example, in my case, advertising. I saw advertising being from, we're going to be the counselors of these big companies, and we aggregate all of this knowledge into one single purpose, which is helping the company move forward, to the fragmentation. So tell me one or two changes that, in retrospect, you would have never even imagined that they would happen.
The first one, the two are significant for the markets. Now, the first one is digital. When I was in Latin America, I took some of the money that we had for the traditional business, and although it was not in my P&L digital, I used some of this money to help the digital business, and that proved to be super successful. But then when I went to the Americas region, when I went to the US and Canada, I knew, because I went to the parties and I saw digital was coming, but the quarter before I joined the North American business, the film business had grown 14% versus a year ago. So the board investors, the chairman, they were all like, yeah, there's not going to be that big of a change, no? And somehow this integrates your way of working in the beginning, which very, very quickly changed. So not only I used a little bit of what I learned in Latin America, but I think the company was so much in denial of what was happening that the whole change process was happening in dosages of every 2 months we fired 10% of the people or 12% of the people. So I don't believe in that, right? Everybody was afraid. Everybody was not performing because they were second guessing what would happen. And if you don't tell people the story, they make up themselves their own stories, no? So we as a management team, we didn't let anybody go with my management team. We were 3 months working with the data, and we said, if we are to make this work, these are the top 5 decisions we need to make, 3 for digital and 2 for traditional. And that's the only way we're going to balance the accounts. It was a very crazy thing that we decided to do. We decided to, for example, deliver photo finishing in 48 hours versus 24 hours. So it's counterintuitive, right? But that saved us $74 million. And 3 months later, everybody followed. So it was stuff like that we as a management team decided to do against all odds, against all that the board was hooked up into dividends. They didn't want to lose market share in film, but defending every point of market share in film costed us $50 million, 50. So by looking at the consumer, by looking at the data, we're able to do things that were kind of not expected. And in terms of cost, we basically went through a huge cost cutting. We cut, I think, 32% of all of our expenses in a year and a half.
Wow.
And instead of cutting the toilet paper, coffee, and make everybody's life miserable, we cut probably 25% more than necessary for that point in time, which allowed us to treat everybody super well for the ones who stayed. And that transparency was very critical. So that's a change. I didn't anticipate how fast it was going. And for 3 or 4 months, we're chasing our own tail in terms of how low it's going to go on the traditional business. And then, as you know, the story of Kodak, I fought 3.5 years before bankruptcy. I couldn't take any more with the board and everything, good people, but they were not willing to do what we had to do, And the second change is with AI. It's happening right now, Marcello. It challenges all of us. And I see it, 2 streams of work happening. One is a lot of people are working on the effectiveness, efficiency of their organizations. So they're substituting human bodies by virtual agents. They are looking at ways to gain more productivity. That's happening more, right? That's happening to people like you and I, people who work in organizations, ChatGPT, Gemini. It's crazy that everybody's starting to use more and more and more. Claude, so there are way many tools, no?
Yes.
But the second area that I'm seeing that is more and more crazy is how categories in the human behavior is changing. The fundamentals don't change, by the way, but people are changing the way they do things. So there's a fundamental transformation and disruption that is happening in some industries, like SaaS, for example, software as a service. All those companies are going down. As you know, some of the organic traffic is down by 40-50% for companies I coach, because this is going to AEO and GEO, answer engine optimization and generative engine optimization, from SEO and from other means. No, so this change, I have to tell you, having lived through the digital change, and I thought I've seen enough. AI is probably 1,000x what I lived in digital, and I'm looking forward to it. But at the same time, it's crazy how fast we have to move as people, as business people, and as entrepreneurs as well.
I would say not only is the speed amazing, it really, by the way, when ChatGPT came out, week 1, the free subscription, week 1, I already had a subscription. When ChatGPT came out with the $20 a month subscription, week 1, I already had a subscription. And I know, I talk to friends, right? And I go, yeah, 71, but I got 5 bots in my computer, in my home, in my phone. I got Claude, I created an app using Base 44. And the whole thing is overpowering. But it's super useful too for smaller entrepreneurs like me. It also brings you a huge amount of information. It hallucinates every so often. But one of the things that I found is that I also tell it, I want to see the sources. I want to link to the source.
Exactly.
So, let's say today you were talking about, what is happening with film, which, by the way, I still remember the first Kodak digital camera.
1975.
Well, I remember way later I was at Colgate and somebody took my picture for the outside ID because I was, working for the Colgate account. And the camera was $12,000 or something. But like 2 years later, I bought a little Panasonic Lumix. It was only 2 megapixels. I took it to Hong Kong. It was incredible. I could take pictures all over the place. Nobody would notice. So I loved it. But today you would go into ChatGPT and say, give me every single white paper that has been published on digital versus film in 2024 and 2025, and I want a link to the papers. You wind up with 50 pages of stuff, or do deep research. So I'm there with you. The speed of AI is 1,000x the speed of what hit us with digital.
Exactly.
Digital
And we can help. I'm sorry. No, we can help our clients. Like the way I'm trying to help more of my clients even further is I'm taking what's the best and brightest, like stuff from, Ray Dalio, Peter Diamandis, everybody. And there's some great papers out there. For example, the Moonshot podcast from the Diamandis, taking all this, taking their business, put it all in one place, and working with Claude and ChatGPT and say, what are the alternative scenarios? Give me an optimistic, pessimistic, realistic scenario for this business 6 months from today, a year from today. It's hard to plan with the velocity, but checking ourselves against what's best and brightest out there really helps.
Oh yeah, it does. So in the couple of minutes we have left, I am past. I have a friend in Spain who said, "Man, we're getting old," and I said, "No, we're not getting. We got." So I'm past the age of like that kind of age. But you probably face, and you deal with like 10 CEOs. What would you tell any of those 10 CEOs?
15.
15. There you go. 15 CEOs. Wow. So what would you tell one of those CEOs about hiring older people? What would be your word of advice?
Yeah, thanks, Marcel. I try to avoid the conversation on segmenting the people, right? I really focus on something I call like the hiring criteria, not a job description of 3 pages, 4 pages, whatever. Like, what are the 5 to maximum 7 hiring criteria you have? So if you're in a company that your livelihood depends on self-generating leads, how many leads you want to generate? Oh, I want to generate hundreds of leads a month. Okay. How many people? Oh, no. If I have the right person, maybe 2 people are enough. Okay, so the people I'm going to try to find in the market are people who have done that. I don't care if that person is 10 years old or 30 years old or 60 years old. Of course, there are things that older people maybe don't have the appetite to do, like maybe 17-hour work days when you have enough money that you're comfortable. Probably some of us don't want to do it. But in most instances, it's not, much. On the other hand, what the age gives us, as you said, Marcelo, we made so many more mistakes than everybody else, right? So I would say older or more senior, whatever you want to say, I worked for companies for 32 years. The amount of mistakes I made, living internationally, etc., 143 countries, managing 12,000 people, 13,000 people, is gigantic what you learn, no? So that knowledge is something that for AI is more difficult to replicate because they haven't been there. They haven't been there sitting in the boardroom, sitting in an investor meeting, sitting with 12 analysts from Wall Street getting beaten up and, for the performance of the share. Understanding the dynamic of a business team, a leadership team, and seeing that and perceiving that. So AI is not there yet. So I would say the older people are probably even more equipped than not to work in the AI era.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm very glad to hear. And yeah, I'm more afraid of LI, low intelligence, than AI, to be honest.
Yeah.
But you've made a really good case, and I like the whole point of the hiring criteria. You have and as you know, I'm also an analytical person. I think analytically. If you have 5 things that the person can, should do, then everything else becomes irrelevant. Either you do them or you don't do them, and that's fantastic. So yeah.
And Marcelo, we haven't talked as much lately, but you are the most analytical, person I've met in your capacity in my whole life. So for me, it was very easy to talk to you. And to this day, some of the principles that you and I discussed, decades ago, they're still valid. Consumers are exactly the same. We're using different ways to get to them and to get to ourselves. Our ways of working, our ways of buying things changed, but we still are looking for the same things.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. If I were
Thank you,
human, I would
Marcelo.
watch. So, no, thank you, Jamie. Muito obrigado.
Obrigado a você.
Eu acho que estou esquecendo meu português. But I try. So thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure, and hopefully we'll get together one day when you are here and I'm here at the same time.
Cool.
Thank you.
Will do.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.